Good evening. This is the September 6th, 2023 meeting of the Old Line Economic Development Commission. On a balmy evening, we have at the table Commissioners Joe Kamian, Jean Wilczynski, MJ DeRizio, and myself, Cheryl Poirier. We do not quite have a quorum yet, but perhaps we can start to go through some of the items and on any items that I know we have. Well, I'll go over who else is excused this evening. But as we come across items such as approving the minutes, and we need a quorum, we will vote on those things later in the meeting. I know that Terry Lewis is arriving a few minutes late. And excused this evening are Mona Colwell, Wendy Russell, both for travel, and also Scott Smith, who has taken a new position at Eastern Connecticut State University, and this fall semester has a class on Wednesday evenings he's committed to teaching. He has given me the choice of whether I'm going to try to mute this, but I'm not really sure how to do that. I don't know how to mute participants. If you could mute yourself, if you're on the phone, we would appreciate it.
I don't know how to do that. They're sorry.
And unfortunately, I don't know either, so I just don't see where to do that. Let's test something and see if you're muted or I'm muted. Okay. All right. We'll do the best we can, but I have to share with you, I don't know how to mute you on this telephone.
Okay.
Okay. So as I was saying, Scott has given me the option of keeping him on the commission with 4 excused absences, and he would do work on his spring semester calendar to better accommodate the EDC, or if we needed to replace him, he was putting that in our decision basket, and I would like to excuse him for the next 4 meetings. I think he's a valuable member of our team. So if we need to discuss that further, we can do that.
I'm not so sure that I have an opinion one way or the other. I would trust your judgment. I also think that we're coming into a lot of holiday season, so I'm not quite sure how much we'll have, and I'm certain he'll read minutes and get right to. So okay. I'm fine with that. I don't care.
Okay. And I have joining the meeting John Stratton. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a quorum now. Thank you. Okay. So then the first order of business is approval of the August 2nd meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I have to abstain since I was not at the meeting.
Okay, Jean will be abstaining from this. Who was at the August meeting? John, were you there?
Yeah, I was there, yeah. I did read the minutes. I thought they were excellent.
Would you care to make a motion?
I will move.
All right.
Consideration.
And do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
All right, MJ? Any discussion on the August meeting minutes? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an abstention with Jean. Anyone else abstaining?
I'm trying to think if I made it to the last one.
The minutes actually list you as not being being absent.
Okay, so we have 2 abstentions. And
I thought you came in. Well, that's right.
Might have got here late, I think is what.
No, that was your August vacation.
Yeah.
Any no's? All right, so the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next up is public comment. Do we have any public comment? There's no one in our Meeting Hall. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to add public comment?
Not I, thank you.
All right, thank you. If not, we'll move on to marketing and promotion. Wendy Russell.
Who's on the phone?
Can you state your name just so that we have you in attendance? Okay. We have Wendy Russell not here tonight. She'll report next month on the ERTD, the Regional Tourism District update. Next on the agenda, we have economic indicators. MJ, do you have an update on real estate?
I have an update, and I will tell you that there's been absolutely no changes or updates in the commercial property activity at all. But I do have some new summary reports which are now available to me. So again, there's no current activity to show you, but I will begin running them early enough to send them to everyone in advance about the market conditions on the commercial side. The residential side is as robust as ever, but I'm not so sure what that's going to add. There are, let me see, 23 active listings, and the average price is, are you sitting? 1.3 million.
That's the average?
That's the average. Closed properties in the past 35 days, this is only 8 listings, and the average price on closed was $637,000, rounding off. They were all over ask, so there were lower listed properties on, they all went out over ask. There are 9 properties with an $842,000 average list price that are under agreement. That's 9, and then there are another 4 that are getting close to that stage, and they're at $645,000. So that the residential side is clearly busy, 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 busy. I have a little chart here that I will also include with the packet that shows you how Old Lyme prices are climbing relative to the overall Connecticut market. And the top line here, which people on the phone can't see, there's a steep increase, and the average price point overall is very high. We're not in the highest price point in the state of Connecticut, but our growth is steady. It's not as erratic as the overall market.
So we're the blue at the bottom.
Pardon me?
We're the blue at the bottom.
We're the blue at the bottom.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
And the top is the entire state of Connecticut. I also have a quick stat report and prices year to date. The average sales price year to date is up 8.4%. So we are growing slightly faster in prices than the rest of the state, I believe. There are pockets that defy that, obviously, but because people still think there's value here, they're paying more. The median price is up close to 11% year to date. Year over year, surprisingly, I would have said shouldn't matter because we were coming out of COVID and that period was still robust. Year over year average price is up 76%.
Can you explain what that means, year over year?
Last July of 2022, the average price was $468,000.
Oh, okay.
This year it's $823,000. That's year over year. And those are based on, I believe, trailing 3-month averages, so it's not a point in time per se, but gives you a little more accurate picture. It's incredible. We don't track where these people are working.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Where they're coming from.
I ask in sales meetings all the time, and we should start doing it. I mean, especially here, because we're not a big volume area. shouldn't be that hard to figure out, but just anecdotally, it's
Well, I mean,
normal stuff.
the new homes that are going up in Lord's Woods, they're all priced over $1 million.
Oh, every single one of them.
Yeah,
And they go on multiple offers with backup.
right. So that's definitely pulling things up, I would think.
Well, yes, but if you,
But they're not the only ones.
they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
I'll send the
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
reports around so you can look at what these houses really are, and it's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And the high interest rates don't seem to be slowing anyone down. But I will admit that the upper-end buyers are still paying cash.
That's what I'm hearing from along the shoreline.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
incredible. You know, we know they're not saving their little COVID disbursements. Those are people who actually can afford to pay cash for a $1 million+ house. So I don't know where they're working.
Or where they're relocating from. You know, that would be another,
I
are they coming from out of state?
If I had to hazard a guess, I would say the pattern is still the same. It's people who are buying up or downsizing or for some reason need to move because of a job or to be close to a relative or far away from a relative. You know, all the usual reasons. I think the anomaly of COVID, the run from the city, was really a one-off. It'd be hard to change that trend in a year or two. Statistically, I mean, it would just not be normal.
It's fascinating, MJ. Any questions for MJ?
So I'll pass these around and you can look at them.
Thank you. And I do like your statement, because people feel there is value here. They're willing to pay more. And I think that's key to us as a commission.
You see they're selling in Greenwich and in Fairfield and even in Shelton, because they're so much closer to the city and the job market, the concentration of jobs, Hartford, New Haven, New York, whatever, Stamford. Amazing.
Great. Good, thank you. Okay, business openings, closings, and ribbon cuttings. The season is ending in Soundview, so we do have a lot of businesses closing for the season, including outside of Soundview, Hallmark Ice Cream and Holland Farms, probably several others. So first, we would just like to wish everyone a good season off and recovery. We'll come back to discussing Soundview later in the meeting. We also have, and of course this is all word of mouth, so I don't always know all the businesses opening, but upcoming ribbon cuttings, I do have to circle back around to ABA on Davis Road. The Poire is supposed to be reopening soon after the fire. I have a call into the co-owner, and Brent Thompson's driving school has moved from one side of Halls Road over to 90 Halls Road. They'll be having an open house on September 29th, and they would like to invite the EDC, and perhaps we can do a ribbon cutting for them as well. There is a fig and olive business that is supposed to be opening on Hartford Avenue, and I haven't seen any movement there. So I don't know what's going on there. Does anyone know of any other businesses opening, closing, apart from the seasonals?
I haven't come across that, no.
And of course, the ice cream shop closed. So last month we wished her a happy retirement.
Do you have any idea when they will be ready to reopen as the gallery, as an art gallery?
I don't have any insight on that. I don't know if they're starting out as a private, residence and studio space and then opening a gallery. I don't know how that's working yet. Okay. Economic revitalization. let me just say, I'll invite Edie Twining from the Halls Road Project in the coming months to give us an update. But we have Joe here representing Shoreline Gateway.
Okay. Let me give you a report on okay, the discussion included the recommendations that I had emailed to Cheryl regarding the rewrite of the bakery letter, just to get that finalized, to put it on the agenda for this meeting. And then also the question about could an advanced Connecticut or equal study be useful to help focus on.
So you can share both of those items with the group because they're not familiar with it.
Okay, so, the bakery letter, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but here's a draft 2, I call it. And it's basically an effort to solicit a proper baker to set up shop in Old Lyme. I was going to suggest that, once the select persons approve of doing this, that it be directed to bakeries in New York City, Boston, and Hartford, and hopefully to try to get some interest and how that might be incentivized by the town.
And the reason a bakery is of interest.
Right. The survey had 1,200 responses suggesting a bakery as one of the preferred enterprises to bring to the Gateway area. So that's kind of a significant thing, I thought. I thought that without some soliciting, some encouragement, some incentive, it's not going to happen. So I thought maybe this might be a way to try to get some interest.
Do you think that any of the popular bakeries along the shoreline consider having a substation here, just like SIP has gone from Mystic to East Lyme, and God knows where they'll wind up next.
And Watch Hill as well, yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just like the, what was it, the Salty Monkey was using Deke's Bagels from East Lyme, right? So, along those lines.
So I just wondered if we have to reach that far, because then...
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally open. I mean,
Right.
it's a good concern. Could we find? I'm just thinking, if you look at, for example, I don't know if you've been to Boston to, is it Mike's is one of them, and Modern Bakery.
All the Italian ones.
Yeah, they're all in the North End. But you look at a bakery like that, obviously the scale would have to be appropriate to us. And the same thing in New York City, Arthur Avenue, Bronx, another Italian neighborhood. But, there's like a dozen bakeries. The model seems to work. It's kind of like if you build it, they will come, I think.
Here's what I worry about, Brano. They bit off more than they could chew. And by the way, the best part of that business, in my personal opinion, was the bakery.
Of which,
In Saybrook.
they had a different name for Gargano's?
Whatever it was.
Okay.
In the old sports camping site.
Yeah.
And
They closed after 1 year.
Yeah. And the comments online were how expensive it was. So
See, if...
I'm just putting this
my
in place for
feelings
you.
are, if there's a sufficient variety of extremely high quality, I think it'll sell for a price. I mean, look at the kids. They go to Starbucks and they pay ridiculous prices for coffee.
Regarding the geography, one of the bakeries, I don't know if we're putting names out there in our minutes, but one of the bakeries is a well-known Italian bakery in Hartford, and I think the original thinking was we have people summering here from inland Connecticut who know this bakery and, would perhaps frequent it during their time
And the
here.
Hartford ones are all on my suggested list of who to solicit.
So there is Hartford, perhaps we have New Haven as well, I don't remember one way or another.
I went to a shower last Sunday, just as another personal story, and there were baked goods from an Italian bakery on the shoreline, which I believe was in Guilford, I could find out, that were just amazing. A little tiny bakery.
So I would say
So
you're
that's-
probably open to these additional
Certainly, no.
bakery names.
I
and
welcome
addresses.
anybody to add to my list. I already had sent the list out. I don't know, it's sort of,
On your Shoreline Gateway Committee you did, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm surprised they said that about a bakery, though. It's kind of interesting.
I think about half the or 60% of the respondents
Did they,
thought it would be nice to have a bakery
well,
here.
second that.
restaurant.
Well, judging from the lines at SIFT, early in the morning, all this past weekend, to me, it's a sort of Starbucks of bakeries, but that's all right, as long as there are lines and people are enjoying themselves. And business seems to be good, and the people are willing to be there at 8:30 in the morning. Deeks likewise.
I was going to say, Deeks runs out if you're not there before noon or 11:30. Your choices are minimal.
And I go cheerfully, attempt to go to the donuts, the former Soundview Donuts down in Soundview, and they're closed. If you're there at 9:30, they're
Yeah.
closing up.
You have to order early in the week or several days ahead of time.
But, the artisanal value of bakeries, that is, they're made there and they have very short shelf life. I mean, a classic bakery is a very short shelf life, so you don't get donuts for Tuesday on Friday. You don't expect them to be ready. And, like Joe, growing up in the mean streets of wherever you grew up, there were half a dozen Italian bakeries in New Haven. And people, they were moving, they were jumping on Sunday morning. And, same neighborhood. You think of Worcester Street, but that's like a high-end survivor of that era. That when there was a bakeries all over town, because their product didn't travel more than half a dozen blocks. So, something to keep in mind, though. I think that's a good idea to see if any of them think more than a half a dozen blocks away from their source. Though I think Marchigiano's, their trucks are all over the city of New Haven.
Why did the cake lady leave East Lyme? That's always perplexed me.
She's completely shut down now.
Yeah,
She's not in
I don't
London
know
either.
why. I mean,
Yeah.
she was really good. So I would think that maybe ask a couple people why they closed or why they
that's a
didn't.
good question. There are actually bakers who have home-based businesses in Old Lyme. I know one of them also does a couple of the farmers markets around. There's one up in Lyme that I think every time they do a farmers market sells out by like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Is that the Beaverbrook Road?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you...
And you can also order.
When you call them up, they say, well, we don't really do business that way. They do business some other way.
Because the storefront is expensive to
Yes, exactly.
have.
Maybe some of these little artisan people would like to form a bakery co-op, spread the cost.
My thoughts were,
variety.
we send the letter out and see, first off, do we have any interest coming back?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
certainly can't hurt anything.
Isn't that a good way to get started? That's kind of what I thought. So the real question is, do the select persons approve of doing this? And who should be the signature of the letter?
Well, I think it was decided it was the EDC and the Shoreline Gateway Committee. So I guess I will ask someone to make a motion that I co-sign this letter or some version of this letter. I'd like to step it up a little bit.
I'll make a motion that the bakery solicitation draft be advanced to final form and that EDC recommend to the Board of Select Persons that the signatures be the chair of the EDC and the chair of the Shoreline Gateway Committee.
Yeah, I don't even think they need to.
Why do they have to be involved?
I don't even think they need to be involved, because we're the business
We're doing,
development people.
Okay, that's fine. That can be
And does this, remind me, does the Shoreline Gateway have a chair or co-chairs?
Co-chairs are Matt Ward and
That's what-
Martha
That's what
Shoemaker.
I thought.
Yeah. And they have been working with Joe on the
Okay.
letter as well. And because it has really grown, where originally the concept had to do with the Moroccan.
Well, the fact that the El Morocco property was for sale, and if you look at some of these establishments in New York, they look exactly
The stone
like
facade.
the
So
same
that was
arch
the
facade.
impetus. So it was originally, can we get a bakery to
Go in.
Harvard Avenue, or to that location, and then broader, perhaps Shoreline Gateway. And I think now what we want to do is just to get some interest and then show locations or talk about locations and possibilities after the fact.
Basically, the sentiment was don't constrain to any one location. So that's
Yeah.
logical.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, includes breads.
though it has to include, for Martha, it has to include chocolate chip cookies. I told her we would make that part of our due diligence.
So,
Bread, yes,
bread.
no, I'm with you, yeah.
Oh, I think good bread, that was the one letdown when I moved to Old Lyme almost 40 years ago, was in New York you had an unlimited selection of good bread, and then you come here and there's no bread.
although I will say, seasonally, places like Holland Farms has Mazzucato products out of Hartford. So, there's some retail distribution. For the record, I want to state that Terry Lewis has joined the meeting. Thank you, Terry. So we're just talking about bakeries. And, okay, so we have, Joe, you've made a motion.
I'll second it.
And MJ is seconding it, that if we need further discussion, that the EDC will finalize a letter in conjunction with the Shoreline Gateway Committee and sign and send it off to a list of bakeries.
Correct.
Any further discussion?
Just one line. I think this could be a good model for many other things that we stumble on that we're just not doing here in town, but would be willing to entertain businesses from far away that already exist. Far away meaning measured in miles, that already exist, but would consider us because we don't seem to have a business like that. We don't seem to have a market like that, but we do.
Are there any health issues, like the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, or anybody like that needs to sign off on a new food or a new eatery?
I imagine,
that, the health-
I imagine there's got to be regulatory requirements.
Yeah, the health district.
Probably the health
Ledgelight.
district.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Ledge Light would have to approve before anyone could buy anything there.
All right, so that's topic one, and topic two is...
So all in favor of this letter, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No? Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes.
And as a separate issue, to John's point, the Velvet Mill in Stonington, that was 100%, the town of Stonington built a mill. It's like the Field of Dreams deal, the baseball movie, right? They built a mill and enticed, and it was deliberately a specialty, high-profit textile product, which was velvet. They enticed mill owners from Europe to come, take up station. The mill operated for over 100 years and was the biggest employer in town. And that was totally because of the town's thrust to do economic development. So, without some incentive, nothing's going to happen.
Do you want to speak to the conversation Shoreline Gateway Committee had
Yes.
about a study?
Yes. So the Gateway Committee talked about, we discussed that the Advanced Connecticut study that was done, by us, chartered through us, EDC, was not focused on the Shoreline Gateway area. And the question was, would a focused study be worthwhile? And it was something that we could discuss. So, I would think, yes, it would. I don't know the mechanics of how we would fund such a study.
Right.
So that becomes the chicken and egg on that.
Where are we at? September? So I would consider inviting someone from Advanced CT to your meeting,
Okay.
or a meeting of just a few members, if that's, to talk to Advanced CT. Courtney Hendrickson isn't there anymore. She's
No.
in New Haven doing economic development for the city. So, and then I would do that fairly quickly because budget season is coming up and you would need to put in a budget request by November for a study.
I somehow, it's the position that Shoreline Gateway has probably to hand off to EDC to deal with this. So, but if it should be Shoreline Gateway, then I'll come back and say we discussed it and thought that it belonged to Shoreline Gateway.
Okay, well then let's discuss it further. So, it sounds like the question is,
Would it be worthwhile
for the EDC
to take ownership of this?
commission a study of the Soundview? And what kind of questions are they hoping to answer?
I'm guessing what kind of commercial development would be optimal would be the question.
You know that you don't have 100% commercial zoning along
Yes.
that strip.
Sorry for the silence, I'm writing notes.
Would that be open-ended, or would you try to narrow down the responses by types of businesses, like groups, services, or medical, or food and beverage, or whatever? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, a few years
I'm
ago,
wondering if you make it too big, it gets costly,
And
and that would be something to ask them, but.
And the survey's already done. I think it would, if something like this were to go ahead, it would be Advanced CT looking at the regional economic development strategic plan and what kind of population changes they see in the coming years, and the traffic, on Shore Road and or Hartford Avenue.
And the parking.
What the issues are, the water treatment.
And the demographic has changed significantly in the past 3 years, so a refresh of the people who are doing the input and responding might be very different than they were 3 years ago even.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I would weigh the cost effectiveness of a in-depth versus a high-level.
I think the first thing is to determine what that cost would be. So we probably should make it, a request, whatever, request for interest or proposal.
The only question you're going to have on, if you give people a survey and they say they would love to have a new restaurant,
Yeah.
they have no idea what a new restaurant, what it takes to get a new restaurant. It's not just, let's have a new
Well,
restaurant.
and that's my concern as well with a restaurant or a bakery or anything. It's
Right.
nice to have that, but what these businesses that are going out of business are finding is, someone's going to go to a bakery maybe once every X weeks as opposed to every day, and you don't have the amount of population in a town like this to support a business
Especially that far off the highway.
Exactly. And Halls Road, they're worried about, we don't want to be a highway stop, but those businesses depend on people getting off exit 70.
Yeah, it's not everyone living in town that goes to Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. Or the Bowerbird, or, these are destinations.
But my point is, if you tell them, what would you like, and they say, oh, we would love to have a dressmaker, then you set them up to expect that someday you'll give them a dressmaker, and that's not.
I feel like we don't need another survey. I feel like the survey's done. I think the survey was very comprehensive and robust and...
Why don't you pull out the survey and ask people to validate those opinions?
Well,
Have their opinions changed?
I would suggest that what we don't, I agree that we don't need another survey. What we need is what could be actionable to move projects ahead.
So if we were to make suggestions, for example, some time ago, when we were kind of beginning the shoreline survey and trying to link up existing businesses with, for example, the bike shop with the Blackhall Outfitters. That was one issue. I talked to the bike shop fellow at some length, not hours, but a long time. And he would love to do that if he thought that there was business there. And now you probably have spent a while during the summer dodging platoons of bicyclists who like our town because it's more or less flat, and it lends itself to a casual bike tour. And for more serious riders, they have all the hills they want, just a little bit inland. So would that be worth talking to the bike shop guy about summer expansion in the shoreline, where there are lots of much more recreational bicyclists just riding around there? So that's the kind of model that we might look at.
When I start to think about these different businesses, I try to place them in town, growing up, where they go. Have you ever thought about a study of what actual buildings and how many places that you could place things in? Because that really is the most important part of where can you put them.
Right.
Not everybody can go, it's going to do Soundview. I mean, that's, Soundview is the one and only, and Halls Road is the one. Have we ever done, because I can go through my head, you can go through your head, of what buildings are and what spaces are available, but have we ever put that down?
I think in various stages. On Shore Road, I know people have definitely thought about what could go in the Cherry Stones property, and that has wetlands at the back and various, so, everyone talks about, oh, that would make a great mini golf course. Well, actually it doesn't because of the land and how it's broken up and things like that.
Do we have a full list of all of our, we had a list comprised of, square footages and what's available and what business owners, and then you kind of can go with what can we put in and how would we welcome them in.
Exactly along those lines, mini golf, you need half an acre, whatever the magnitude is, although that was also discussed at our meeting. A town employee suggested mini golf at Soundview parking lot would generate more revenue than the parking. So the question is, would it fit?
So, is there a way to compile this list? Is that something you guys could work on?
I think what's really easy is we just look at the assessor's map and
Exactly.
pick off which are commercially zoned
But see, that's
areas.
also where, like in Advanced Connecticut, Advanced CT or whatever, what I'm looking for is something that would help, because we're volunteers, how much time can we put into this? Can we get some recommendations of what might be actionable?
But that goes together with what is available.
Yeah.
And then you comprise some, you put together some sort of business owner with these certain spots, and then get the business owners together with how can we help you with a certain, especially, down through Soundview on the side where the medical building is, and those, what are your spaces? How big are they? What square footage?
As an example, I can throw out too many wild cards, but...
Well, let's stick with this, because I don't want to go off on tangents too much.
Well, I'm not. I'm saying, go to Westbury, and they have an ice rink that they just pop up in the winter.
Yeah.
There's an example.
Used to have that in New London too, downtown New London.
Okay, but what we're talking about is creating a list of properties and what their
What would be actionable?
availability would be,
What would be, what would be actionable?
because one thing we seldom talk about also is the distribution and light manufacturing
Mhm.
on the hill.
Thinking of that.
Patches Hill. So if both of you want to put your heads together and think about how to create a list, that would be,
Just go through that.
yeah. And then at least we have it in one place, like you're saying, Terry.
Because I mean, we can welcome a ton of different things, but if they're not going to fit, it's a waste of energy. And especially, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but we are volunteers, and so I think it's kind of silly to try to.
What would be your time horizon? Because the other factor is all of the sewer and water projects that are going in on the beach community, which will then result presumably in more year-round living down there. So what we decide today might not be what is really important in 8 or 10 years, or even 5.
Well, they've completely, the other night, I sat in a quick meeting, but George Finley and a bunch of, I don't mean to put names out, so I'll write that down, but a few people have discussed the sewers, and they're not going forward with any of the sewers down at the old Colony, Old Lime Shores, Miami Beach. Miami Beach is still somewhat pushing it, but they're saying absolutely no, and
The Board of
$80,000
Select-
septic, and
Yeah.
they're done.
The capital cost is off the chart.
Yeah, so they're absolutely not even putting it on the table or a discussion anymore, so.
And it came up at the Board of Selectmen last night as well, just as
Yeah, they were trying to see what they can regenerate down there, and they did so many tests and water tests. I mean, it's changed so much when the power plants have been shut and what the river used to look like and what it looks like now. And the water testing, the soil testing, the sand soils, it's kind of silly. It's silly to put them in when you can have these incredible engineered septics now that can go in for $40,000 versus the $80,000 that they're trying to do. And what is it going to cost the town?
We need to find out what the thinking is for Hartford Avenue as well, because I don't think the businesses on Shore Road can tap in, if I remember right, because of the Clean Water Act. But I don't know what the town is thinking about for Hartford Avenue. And they have to renegotiate with New London, too.
I think they're giving up.
And with the state, I mean, it's mandated.
Not even a reasonable number.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine how they can quantify $80,000 to $93,000 in
Per
a septic
building.
system. That's just crazy.
So anyway, that sounds to me then that it will remain predominantly a seasonal area. So that also factors into what you need or want down there. And I would think it would be more like I need an ATM or a drive-through pharmacy or something where I don't have to go to East Lyme or all the way over to Falls Road to get my services. That would be a bakery, yes, after you go have your blood work.
Well, you're fasting. You said when you're done.
Oh, golly. Okay.
An outpatient surgery center, I mean, medical's still growing.
It is.
A lab,
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, medical buildings are going up everywhere.
everywhere. I mean, it's incredible.
That's what's going up next to Costa Vida.
Yeah, I just saw the sign the other day. I'm like, oh, that building's now
That-
Hartford Healthcare.
Yeah.
I know, I thought it was going to be apartments.
Yeah, I did.
Also really interesting things that they've been doing and outside of Boston, the small rural areas, they're taking lots, like just say cherry stones lots, and they're doing what they call pop-ups, and it's per season. And so similar to what they're doing in the Seaport, they knock 3 buildings down, they have a vacant lot. And while the buildup is going around to them, they create these little, in the wintertime, they're villages for vendors, and then ice skating in the middle. And then in the wintertime, they do, well, that's what they do, is the ice skating in the winter, but then they do breweries that were startup breweries, which I know we don't want to add a ton of alcohol to the town because everybody starts to go eat. But if there's these different places to be available for something that we can kind of collaborate and create and turn over, maybe it'll start generating more. It's just a thought. But they're really interesting to go to. Have you ever been to any?
Who drives that, though? Is it the merchants and the chamber, or is it economic development? Oh, developers.
Yeah. So it would just say whoever owns the property on Cherry Stones, they lease it out and create an EDC or a different, they have chambers, they help them create these, 3-week-long farmers market, 3-week-long at Christmas time in Boston. They have like
crafts
tiny
and
little crafts and booths and
Yeah,
villages.
they do that in Philadelphia
Really neat.
too.
Well, Stonington Borough's lobster trap tower
Yeah.
was created to just be a cool thing, and it attracts thousands of people there.
Yeah. It just,
And once they get there and look at the lobster traps, they go to Noah's, so they go to restaurants.
John,
Yes.
a giant tick statue, like Burning Man.
Without the flooding. Okay, so, I will go ahead and reach out to Advanced CT. Terry and MJ, you can, work on the list. That would be great. And we'll see what Advanced CT, what advice they have, on how we should proceed, or if at all, and costs and that sort of thing.
and maybe a relationship with Park and Rec, just a thought, and EDC and businesses, for instance, like Haynes Park. We were talking endlessly about summer movies and some things where you can help Park and Rec at the same time as being part of EDC. This skating that goes on, it's only ankle deep at Rogers Lake when it does freeze over. And people putting lights on there, just things like that. It might not be that we're welcoming in these big businesses. I know that sounds very small, but it actually starts small and it kind of grows. So if you can help maybe Park and Rec money.
Like, for example, years ago, when we actually had winters, we would skate on the pond behind the Cross Lane Firehouse.
Yeah, free access from Library Lane. But now that it is full
All
Phragmites,
you need.
it's not there.
Just thought.
I'm sure you could just create a pop-up rink in today's day and age.
Like
It
Westerly.
used to be at least
They
two.
used to do that over by Stop and Shop in Old Saybrook.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, yeah.
A pop-up, yeah.
That'd be kind of fun.
There was one, I think it was called Greens or something, that's the family, on Mel Creek Road and the intersection with Whippoorwill Road, right there, there was kind of an offshoot of the Black Hall River, but it was a sizable pond, perfect, as big as this room. And it used to be used for skating. Similarly, on Library Lane, or as you describe it, behind the schools, those ice ponds were used, and the visible one off Library Lane was, kids would shovel it off and do hockey there.
Yeah.
But through combined state lack of interest in having that, I'll call it dredged, but cleared, restored as a pond, it's not suitable anymore. However, one last point. Up in East Haddam, however, up near Shagbark hardware store up there, there's a sizable pond at an intersection there, Route 151 and 82, I think, roughly.
So is it
and that is maintained as an ice pond.
To get input from the group that we originally thought might do a survey?
Yes, I
To
said,
talk about the pop-up
I'm gonna,
with them? And
we'll
how-
start with
that
them, yeah.
concept, Whatever
Yeah.
we want to
Yes.
call it.
You have a gorgeous building at Town Woods that has facilities and a kitchen and an actual building that is something that we can, and they want to lock it down.
you know what? We have a meeting coming in after us, so I want to keep us moving. John, I want to keep us moving.
I was going to say, your point is a very good one. Where's the space available? What are cool things that we could think of to fill them?
Yeah,
The-
okay.
Just real quick, the pop-ups, the library and the firehouse had brought a temporary mini golf, 3 holes, as a fundraiser, and it was extremely popular.
Yeah.
So there's just an example. Okay, move on.
Okay, thank you. Chamber of Commerce update. Jean?
Okay, well, as Cheryl had noted in an email, there are, the Greater Old Saybrook Chamber is really making an effort to do some activities in Old Lyme There's a Thursday morning, next Thursday, the 14th.
Is that already?
Yeah, at the Old Lyme Inn, 8 to 9. And then there's one of their chamber connections is in October at High Hopes, which has been a member of the Greater Old Saybrook Chamber for a while. So that's an evening, a Thursday night, the 19th of October from 5:30 to 7. And then there's a Women in Business presentation at the Old Lyme Inn. That's a lunch Friday, November 17th. So that they've reached out searching for locations. It sounds like the Old Lyme Inn is interested in supporting some of that to maybe encourage more participation. I reached out and they sent me a list of new members that they're calling from the Lyme Old Lyme Chamber. There's a couple that are East Lyme and New London and Lyme, but there were 18 members. There's 3 individual members joined, and then some real estate and a couple of nonprofits, but then, a couple of businesses too. So it does seem that there's been at least some interest, and anything obviously we can do to encourage that would be great. And they are very interested in, keeping things going.
And the EDC is a member, so if anyone would like to attend any of those 3 meetings or any of their meetings, you can go.
Who gets their newsletter if we're represented? Like, we're represented by William Pitt. Because their newsletter used to say who the new members are, so this is all news to me because I don't get them.
So I get it at the EDC email address, and I can start forwarding them to you all.
I get it because I'm a member.
Right.
So,
do they still tell you who all the new members are?
I think they do. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And they also do here's everything happening over the next week or 2 weeks on every Tuesday.
I've been on their site, and they do give you a robust calendar.
Yeah, they do have a very robust calendar.
That's good, MJ. I will forward those emails. It hadn't occurred to me. Okay, the EDC strategic planning process. Looking at our agenda, I thought tonight would not be the night to start delving into this, but I did send to you all yesterday a document from 2019, which I don't know that it might be a mission statement about us, what we are doing, supporting economic investment and revitalization. I also included in that email the town's vision statement from the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I think anything we do needs to keep that vision in mind, what the character of Old Lyme, the Planning Commission is looking for. So any thoughts on starting this process? And Terry, I know you weren't here last month, but what I'm really hoping for is to not only have a map of what we should be focused on, but something, not just the map, but also the why. So why are we doing certain things, or what should we stay focused on? And it's pretty easy to go off on tangents of ideas of things to do. Is it keeping within our mission and our plan? So maybe we'll start at
plenty to say. When I first joined this commission, I remember having a discussion specifically about the mission and whether the mission was as economic development, whether the mission was to work at a very local retail level, meaning that it was up to us to promote local businesses to the people who lived here. And that was one school of thought. And the other school of thought was that no, there should have been more vertical integration where maybe Sennheiser or Pasqualini or somebody had a supplier or a salesperson that they needed to be closer to bring their costs down or to make their bottom line improve. So that was what I would call the institutional level versus the retail level. So that's where I still have a conflict. I'm not sure what it is, and I'm not sure that when I read about us, that
Yeah.
is clear.
Right.
And I don't think we can do both well. You know I like the ribbon cuttings, and I think those are really high visible things that people see around town. But I think in order to really spur economic development, because we have a large nonprofit base here, we have to go beyond our comfort zone. So that's the first part of the mission statement. The smart development piece, I would like to table until we figure out the first piece,
Okay.
because I think they have to dovetail each other.
So that's a conversation to continue, whether we
So I
should be
think that's
focused
my-
on one thing or both things.
Right.
In my mind, we need to focus on both things, but I'm not really sure, once we decide that, then we have to decide what resources do we have to do what we need to do. So we don't really have, in my mind, the ability at this point to, we don't have a paid economic development director who can go to meetings and go to the state and,
But the Gateway project is hardly part of the existing business thing. It's growing.
Oh, right, okay,
So
yeah.
there's a good example of
Okay.
how we dip our
That's fair.
toe in.
Well, along those lines, how did Sennheiser get here?
Yes,
Well, yeah, exactly.
Sennheiser got here because my former neighbor, Leo Leach,
Yes.
developed the property. Leo's son, who spoke German and was in Europe, coaching Little League or whatever he was doing there, and somehow connected with the Sennheiser ownership and persuaded them that this would be a great place to set up your U.S. office.
and Mike,
That's a nice article in the
yeah,
day
very good
recently.
story in the day.
Yeah.
Did not mention that Mike Leach was once a member of this commission.
Well,
Okay, but my
Okay.
point is,
But really,
let's continue. We got to stay
talk
focused.
big picture.
I think we need to generate an appropriate list of what are the targets.
But also, what is the need, right?
Exactly. So do we have all these people working out of their homes, baking breads and things like that because there are no other mechanisms for them to grow and move into a bona fide space, a bakery? Because where's the flour people coming,
Or-
the sugar people, the candy sweetener people?
Or are they doing it because it's easier to do it out of your home when you have young kids? Or something, and
remote workers.
right, so maybe they
Well,
don't
there are
want
workers.
to
There's a limit to what you can do out of your home, because I know for a fact, once you get too big, the U.S. Department of
I would
Agriculture
look at
comes
it
in.
a little differently. What is
But
the
just saying.
resource? What's the feedstock that we have in town? So, for example, the Alaska Gold Rush, there was gold. Thousands of people went there, right? We have a population that includes an awful lot of scientists, an awful lot of engineers, right? And then, maybe I'm like, what else? We have artists, okay? So what are the resources that are here? Could enticing, much like the Stonington Velvet Mill, they had a labor force, people that were willing to work and work hard. That was the enticement, right?
But I
So-
would say your scientists and your intellectual types that you've just described, who have all that brain power and knowledge, are retired. They
No, I
want-
don't
And
think so.
employed. We have a
Majority of them,
lower
because nobody
unemployment
comes
rate
to
than
our
the rest of the
meetings.
state.
I suspect that there's an awful lot that are employed who will never of themselves be into business. But if the right framework was set up, you could create a critical mass.
But will they come? I mean, who
They're
comes
already
to
here.
this meeting?
They're already here.
Well, it gets very difficult when you have such restrictions in town with what zoning puts them through. I'm going to just say it out loud. It's very, very difficult to do anything in this town with what is written through zoning as it is.
That's why I would look at the top-down approach, where maybe the guy who makes the popcorn needs somebody else to supply sugar for him. Where does he get that? From the little food truck that comes and supplies the restaurants? Maybe he wants to grow and he needs a more industrial vendor. I'm seriously, it's a difference between vertical integration and horizontal. That's all it boils down to. So that's my deciding
Yeah.
point.
And I also, in looking at that vision statement, the natural resources that we're not even tapping into as a possible somewhat business. I wouldn't say it's a business, but it's a draw. and helping out what's here. And we don't really tap into our natural resources. We want to hide them. We don't want to use them that much, you know. So
Like what?
so, for instance, like all of our trails and all those different things, like very limited resources. They're using some of those things. They're open to the public, but there's nothing like gathered as in just different days. There's like this day or that day of using some of our natural resources.
Right in line with that, and like John was saying about the bicycle shop, right? Trail biking. If we could set up a circuit, maybe host some kind of a competition, not that we want people killing themselves.
Those right now. They have the biking and so forth, but maybe that could be a little bit bigger with the guidance of the outside
It
source.
could become a
They
draw.
too can't.
I just read the whole land use thing that came out the other day, the land trust people.
Yeah.
They had a fascinating story to tell, and people are using these things.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
So I think we do, but do we want to tell people outside the region?
That's
You look
the
at
big-
how Rogers Lake caught on with the rowers. You know,
That was a 30-year effort.
I understand, but it does.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing,
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
Let's bring, what time is the next meeting? And I think it's 6:30. So I'm just going to step out here and see what,
I'm in the next meeting, so.
I think we should start with this topic next month.
yeah, I agree.
It's a confluence of what might be desirable activities and what are the resources that are already here.
Yes,
Yeah.
natural resources is such an amazing product.
Yes.
Like, nobody wants to talk about them. They want to keep them hidden for ourselves here because they don't want outside resources using them here in Old Lyme.
Well, I don't know if that's, I would agree with that, I just don't think we
Well,
promote them.
I think that the use of Watch Rock was very specifically public.
And why they
They
don't.
close it down because there are too many people.
Well, I think
Wrong sort,
too many disrespectful people. that-
wrong sort, yes.
Yeah.
But that's a bad example of how to use the resource.
Well, it would
It's the
require-
management because we're
Yeah.
such a volunteer town.
Correct.
Right.
It's not their fault.
Right, that's the challenge.
And that's
It's
the challenge.
when you don't have paid staff,
And
it
if
just
we had
becomes
like
very
specific
challenging.
guidance is to be able to find some of these resources.
I understand that, and that, but I use that
Yeah.
Right.
wrong thing.
Can
Okay.
we start with this topic next month?
Yes, okay, we will.
Because it's important, I think.
Absolutely.
I just-
Okay. New or additional business. Okay, sound
Well, I'm sorry, you were going to mention something, I have one thing to mention, go ahead.
under new or additional business?
It would be new.
Okay, all right. Soundview business check-ins about the end of the season. I've started that. I have more people to talk to, including the private lot owners. But the parking, I mean, I don't have a complete survey, but the parking prices this year do not seem to trouble anyone. What's troubling is that there's still an idea out there that parking is expensive based on last year's information. So people are thinking it's still the numbers from last year. And for instance, a person called the carousel and said, well, it's very expensive to park down there. And she said, no, it's whatever it is, $6 or $7 for 2 hours. And they didn't know that. They were going by last year's information. So that's an example. So I want to gather more of the data before really reporting on that.
Because it's changed so much all the time.
Yes.
It'll work itself out if it's consistent.
If it's consistent. So I wanted to say that. And I also want to say about Soundview, I'm hoping before next season we can come up with some ways to promote an evening in Soundview for your family with your little kids, for people in town, because I think habit has a lot to do with many things. I live probably a mile and a half as the crow flies from Soundview. It would never have occurred to me to bring my kids down there because when they were little, because it just wasn't on my radar. And we need to get it on people's regular radar. It's a lovely evening down there. And if you've been down there, you know it. You can go to the carousel and then get an Italian ice across the street, and the kids have a great time at that Captain Video place with skeet ball or whatever it's called. You know, just like when you go to any vacation place, the little game room with collecting tickets and winning prizes.
And the
And,
band that goes down there, and they play the band, the Red Satin Band. I mean, they're dancing.
oh, yeah,
I
on
mean, there's
Thursday
so much
nights,
going
yep.
on down
Yeah.
there. But we don't think of it. And maybe the thing to do is invite the people from up here to have a little pop-up down there. Why make them drive all the way over here? The Stumble could go down there with.
Talk to Frank Papalaro about
Oh,
that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure he'd be very happy to collaborate.
I'd also like to do some sort of a rack card or something. I took pictures of kids on the carousel
Right.
Friday night, I think. So we can do a more targeted promotion. That leads into the Connecticut Magazine that came out. It's a lovely article. But I know there's some disappointment that they didn't really talk much about Soundview in it, which is a shame. Oddly enough, it's a September issue when the season's over, so I know CT Magazine was calling some businesses to take out ads in this. If you're a summer business on Hartford Avenue, why would you get an ad in September? So anyway, but otherwise, a lovely article. And
Harbor Management Commission has been working really hard with bringing police presence by water and Coast Guard. And that seems to be helping this year
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit because in the beginning of the year.
With what?
It was
The
out
crowd?
of control. It was like the boats were cranking their music up louder than the pavilion, and then it was getting really nutsy, and all of the jet skis were going crazy. So since we had water presence, police presence on the water and Coast Guard, it's bringing the quality.
I'll let her know.
And a cigarette boat hit the Saybrook jetty over the weekend.
Okay, I'll come now. Okay.
I was going to say, a cigarette boat hit the Saybrook jetty over this past weekend.
Yeah.
And since I was down at the beach near Soundview for a good part of that time, and I'm used to the musical sound of the V12s blasting up.
But they were coming from Claudio's, not the pavilion.
They were not from our place?
No, we looked into that.
Oh, did you? Good.
Found out that they were coming from Claudio's.
John, did you have a new
One
piece of
thing,
business?
just want to mention the
I
existence
grabbed-
of the Hamburg Fair, which once again, if it didn't break the previous year's record, which was the all-time high record, it came pretty close. So they had over 5,000 people documented. There's really more than that because they have a different ticket-taking arrangement. Lots of people involved, lots of people from Olyme, and a sprinkling of Olyme businesses throughout, which is something to put somewhere on our mental calendar. And they don't have ox poles anymore. They don't have too much of those kinds of animals. There's a sprinkling of other animals. So, but there are plenty of activities, and people are there having fun. And it's not in our immediate geographic base, but it's certainly in our cultural base. So,
Everything I heard tonight says to me that there's enough disposable income in this region for us to pretty much do what we want to do as a commission. And we should go for it, not be afraid of asking for money for it, and think big. Because look at the people who went to Hamburg Fair, and look at the people who were on the beach, and look at, build it and they will come. Yes, but I think that they have the money. I wouldn't worry about the parking.
Any other new
Look at how
business?
people travel. Look at
Yeah. Yeah. Any other new business? Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
that's right. Did you see, you saw this already, Jean, right?
Terry made it.
Terry, second?
Thanks.
Second. Jean, and any discussion? And all in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.